Come on, mate. In you come. You big beast.
I wanted to get together 10 lures for bass that kind of complement each other, will help us fish in different situations, and just limit it to the 10 as well. We've got some lures in here that are old, some that are new, and some that are, well, you'll see. I'm learning all the time, and hopefully this will start things off for those of you that are quite new to the lure fishing game.
So first up, we've got the ever so popular IMA Hound. This is one of a few lures we've got from IMA. Good tackle company, IMA are. This is the Hound 125F Glide, a shallow diver, so it tends to work just under the surface really, if you work it properly, down to about a metre, but no more than a metre. It's not actually a lure that I've used, but it's so well recommended, and last time we did this lure test on YouTube in 2018, it was the one that came most recommended. People were emailing me saying, why didn't I put on the Hound? So it's going on there thanks to a lot of prominent anglers that use it and the feedback we had last time. It's got all the ball bearings in there as well, rattles really well, casts incredibly well, good at punching into the wind. Taking it out, I had a little test and actually compared it distance wise to the other lures, and it casts as far as any of them, even outcasts the needlefish as well. You can tell by the finish. I mean, this probably represents a mullet or a small joey mackerel that's been broken off from the shoal. Everything on it is quality, of course. Size 4 hooks. It's also a shallow diving lure, so it sort of sits no more than a metre under the surface. Really good finish. And what we've done with these lures, I've actually cast them all as a comparison, not into the sea, just to see where they ended up on a flat surface. To be honest, there's not much between them. You can see here though, I think it was the second furthest cast from this lure. These 20 gram plus lures really good for casting. Next up we've got the KOMOMO SF90, and I'm going to cheat a little bit on this one because I'm going to say any of the KOMOMO range. This is a fantastic little lure. The KOMOMO's caught me a lot of fish this year already. This particular one, the SF90, it's kind of just subsurface, so it does dive, but really it's pretty much a surface lure, just on that top few inches of water, and you can really get it to move left to right if you play it properly. As you can see, the KOMOMO range here in lure fishing for bass, it's a vast range, the KOMOMO. I'd pick any of these, any of the KOMOMOs, get it in there. I just wanted something in cotton candy for the list, so I've added a cotton candy version. They've been catching fish actually this year when other lures haven't. If you can get it, try the Chart Black Pearl in the larger size, in the 12 gram size. That might be worth a go. And if you work your rod tip well, you just dip your tip of the rod down, little flicks, you can get it to more or less work as a surface lure, and the bass will see that as a surface lure, but it does go slightly under the water. The action's really good. It doesn't have a traditional lip on it, this one, but I wanted a colourful, bright lure for those bright days where the fish are tempted out of the darker holes to come and smash the lure. So definitely wanted a KOMOMO on there. Casts reasonably well as well. Next up we've got something a little bit different. This is a needlefish, and it's not really a retrieving lure in the same sense. It's 20 gram lure, handmade this one in Britain, which is something, isn't it? I've got one in white, and basically the key with this lure is just putting it in the feeding zone and letting the tide take the lure. So normally with a lot of these lures we're just retrieving them and we're adding the life into the lure to try and make them look realistic. With this needlefish you're doing something a little bit different. You're sticking it into the flow of the water and it's presenting itself dead level. And next up, the needlefish. I've got a feeling this might do quite well, although it's made of wood. Let's give it a try. Obviously it casts quite well. You can put 2 sets of trebles on there, barbless if you can, but no problems casting that one out. Just a little bit further than that J13 there. So it's got it'll drop to the bottom, but it'll drop nice and flat. And what you want to do is find a drift of water where it moves in the body of water where the bass are feeding. Love the needlefish. Maybe a little bit more relevant from harbour arms, walls, deeper water. And that is how the bass will expect to see a mackerel, say, or a big sand eel or lance. Now we have the ZONK. Bit of an obvious choice, the ZONK. It'll be on most people's lists, this one. And again, this does something slightly different to the other lures on the list. In effect, it's a shallow diver. You need to retrieve it relatively quickly to get it to be shallow diving. But I tend to use it slightly differently, as you'll see here. So all I'm doing with this ZONK is just dropping it down. There's a little ledge in front of us, and it's obviously meant to be a bait fish that is injured in some way and just floating in the water column. But that said, you can put some real action into this and it looks incredibly lifelike. There's something about that spooky green eye as well. In terms of finish, it's the best of the bunch. It's also unfortunately the most expensive. Almost looks like a carbon fibre lip on that one as well. Cast brilliantly, no problem with that. And I tend to get bigger fish with this. I don't get the schoolies so much. I've done really well from the kayak with this one round the big boulders. Very little on the retrieve, but more just letting it float into the position the bass are taking the fry from. Those of you that follow the channel will know that I've had quite a few from the kayak. I've had a 5-pounder, 6-pounder, 7-pounder and 11 on this in the last three and a half years. So it's really my go-to for bigger fish. Again, it's got the rattles in it, the 3 treble hooks, size 4s, good quality hooks as well from MEGABASS, and the finish is just well, they say lures catch anglers as well. It certainly caught me. So yeah, I'll always try and have a ZONK in this. The only problem is I've lost a fair few over the years. Just to see how they cast and sort of match up against each other. The MEGABASS ZONK, how far do you think it will go? Good weighty lure this one, 21 grams. Let's give it a try. Only a couple of them went a little bit further. So yeah, no problems with the casting. Well, I wanted a surface lure on here, and they don't get much better than the Pachenko. And this is it. So as a surface lure, obviously it just floats on the surface, and this one here creates a really nice V in the water. And the idea being that bass, curious fish, although they're easily spooked, they can come and have a look. And there's lots of these Zuiros, is that how you say it? Pachenkos on there as well. I quite like the natural colours. A fish that's come out the shoal or a fish that's struggling, and then obviously you want to vary the retrieve of these Pachenkos. Even stop fishing, let it float on the surface, and that initial cast where it drops under the water, if there's bass feeding there, they'll swim away. I've seen them, they'll swim away and then come back again, swim away, come back again and investigate. So the Pachenko, bit of an obvious one. It's also my first lure that I'll use on a session, just to see if any fish follow. Next up, we got the Do Live sticks. Have been quite hard to get hold of these. Again, this is something slightly different. This is obviously a soft lure, soft plastic. and these can be retrieved really slowly. It's in effect like a weedless hook, so that you can actually go through the weeds, over boulders and rocks. Just got to watch your braid there. But for snaggy conditions, definitely got a do live in there. Something I really want to be using, something that's got to be in a tackle box, and it's here in a top 10 as well. Really like those. You just screw them in with these twist locks here. I've listed those underneath as well. It's worth getting a slightly oversized hook. This is a size 5.
A little bit battered. There's no weight on this. No weight on it.
So for me, I don't use these weighted. You can use the weights in them. They'll cast better, obviously, and then drop down deeper. But I prefer the action, and they cast well enough without the added lead on there, just short of the J13 and the needlefish. Next up, we've got the Maria Angel Kiss. I'm naming this the Beast. Really, this can punch through the wind. Rougher conditions, it's going to get picked out a lot easier than some of those smaller lures. Really, if there's a bit of a surf running as well, I like that red head on there. We wanted something with that little trigger point there of an injured bait fish, and the silver does quite well around here as well. Again, this is another lure. I've only had a couple of bass on this one, to be honest, but it got really well recommended last time we did the test. A little bit like the Hound, in that I haven't fished much with it, but so many people recommend it. There's also quite a well-known bass guide recommends this one as well, so I think it's deserved of a place in the top 10.
Next one up is the Angel Kiss. Let's clip this one on and see how it goes. It's one of our bigger one of the bigger lures. I'm going to keep all the 3 hooks on it, although I won't necessarily fish with it like that, but if you do buy these, that's how they come. So I'm hoping, let's get my casting technique a little bit better. No cheating, by lots of practice casts. Okay. There's a little knot in the braid. There's a little knot in the braid, and then I'll show you what it's done. And then what it does, it puts that sort of situation into the braid, and has the added bonus of making me look like a right. You can normally just pull these apart. Got a little knot in there, I think that's why that's happened. Let's try again. A little bit under pressure now. So a smooth cast is going to help. I'm going to do this one again. Yeah, good distance. But again, I've gone off to the right.
It's the only lure we've got with that red sort of face on it as well, which might be a good trigger point. So again, it's another diving minnow, subsurface lure. You can work it around about 1 metre underneath the surf. Just by varying the retrieve as well, you can really add some life in. Now this may look familiar. This is the Rapala J13. Recommendation for this one is either the 9 or the 13 centimetre. And what a lure this is. For me, it kicked a lot of lure fishing off this one. Started getting these in from Sweden. So it's a little bit fashioned by today's standards. But this lure can really catch fish. And I find myself turning to it again and again, despite using these mega expensive Japanese lures. The J13, as you can see, J for jointed. Looks like an injured bait fish, and it moves left to right, left to right. It does seem to pick out smaller fish. I'm not sure why. And very often those smaller fish will be on the tail. Anything above about 3 pounds tends to hit the middle of the fish for some reason. Not sure about that, but yeah, the J13. As you can see here, we've actually got a what's known as a jig skin, which is a little wrap that you put over the lure. This is an old one, and I've just sort of jazzed it up with a jig skin. I think you can still get those on eBay. The faster you retrieve, the deeper it dives, so you can really dig down if you're going casting it near boulders, which is where I think it comes into its own. So if you've got a big boulder, you dive it down past the boulder where the bass are hiding out, and then it just floats to the top, so you can float out snags and things like that. The J13 is a definite for this list. I'll always carry either a 13 or a 9. Next up is the Whiplash Factory Spitting Wire. This is a 15 gram floating lure, and it does something very different to all the others. It's a surface lure, works really well in clear conditions, and for me the main thing about this, you don't really need to work it hard. You can do little flicks, you can let it roll about in the surf. It's high quality throughout as well, but for me it's just the excitement of having this surface lure, and this is where lure fishing becomes so fun. You don't need to retrieve this lure in the same way you would a Pachenko to create that V across the surface. It spits, it flicks, it's a bait fish that's in trouble on the surface. Just for sheer fun, and also recommended by a lot of other anglers. This is brilliant. Next up is the ZURI Minnow, and this one's on the list purely for its fish catching ability. I've been looking back at the records of bass I've caught. I've now had more bass on this than any other lure. It's only a tiny little 9 gram lure, this one. Do have to put a little bit of life into it, unlike the Whiplash that we've just seen. So it floats, and it's a shallow diver yet again. Sorry to all of you fishing those deeper waters, but for a shallow diver this is brilliant. It's actually had the biggest fish I've had this year as well, was on that one there, just over 6 pounds. It is quite hard to cast. It doesn't cast nearly as well as the others on the list. I did forget to bring it down for our little casting day, but man, this fish is brilliant, and I think it represents one of those small bait fish you might see in and around the rocks. But this one has caught more bass for me than any other lure now, and they also last quite well as well. I never seem to get these snagged. It's 2 sets of size 4 treble hooks on here, which might be a bit oversized, but you can see how it reflects the light, and it's got that black lateral line as well, very defined black lateral line, and the silver underneath. And it's just, statistically, this has been the best lure for me, but it's usually one of the first lures I try when I don't know what the bass are feeding on. So very, very simple lure. Bit of a problem with this one though is getting hold of it. If you can get hold of one of these, it's definitely one to try and get. Maybe Amazon will be your best bet. You can see it working over the reef there. You do need to add a little bit of life into here, and a lighter lure rod up to about 20 gram rod is probably best. So it's not an exact science, this lure fishing business, but if I was going to pick 10, these would be the 10 I'd pick. Everyone's got their own choices, of course. So where to go next? If you want to look at more lures on YouTube, I've put a couple of videos up here that you might want to look at with some other opinions, because it is a big purchase, buying a load of lures, and it's worth just having a look at what everyone else has got to say as well. Yeah, nice.
If you want to download a PDF with the names of all these lures in a list, have a look underneath. You should be able to download that PDF, and you can sign up for our email as well. And that's it, the top 10. Hopefully there's some in there that you might not have thought of. Are there any that I've really missed? I'd love to know in the comments underneath. So the only other addition to these might be these little shads, maybe a Dexter wedge, something like that. But generally, if I only had to take 10 lures where we go fishing here on the south coast, these would be the 10. Thanks very much for watching.